A poor girl showed up, covered in mud, at the job interview, and the millionaire CEO chose her over 200 others. But why? Before we begin, let us know in the comments which city you're watching from. And once the story ends, don't forget to rate it from 0 to 10. Enjoy the story. She showed up late, soaking wet, covered in city mud, and completely out of place. She wasn't perfect. She wasn't polished, but she looked him in the eye and made him laugh. Out of 100 women with perfect resumes, he chose the one who walked in like a disaster, and in the end, she walked out with more than the job. She walked out with his heart. Mud and misunderstandings. It was raining in the city that morning. Not the kind of soft, movie scene rain. No, this was cold, sideways rain. The kind that soaks through hope and sweaters. Leia Park sprinted down the sidewalk, one hand clutching her bent umbrella, the other gripping a soggy folder that used to be her resume. She wasn't just late. She was desperate. Rent was due. Her last freelance job barely paid enough for gas. And this interview, it wasn't just a job. It was the last rope before the free fall. She saw the crosswalk light turn red. Didn't matter. She ran anyway. 2 blocks from the Foster Group skyscraper, she heard it. Tires, fast, too fast. A luxury car sliced through a puddle. And in one beautiful, devastating second, the mud hit her, full on. Her white blouse, beige. Her trousers, brown and soaked. Her pride, buried beneath city sludge. She stood frozen in the street like a soggy statue. Umbrella inside out, shoes ruined. And then, the window rolled down. Henry Foster, CEO, power suit royalty, eyes like Judgment Day. He looked, he blinked, and then the window rolled up again. Just like that. No, 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 no. Leia muttered, raising her hands to the sky. You fancy penguin. You Armani robot. You emotionless paperweight. The car vanished into traffic. Leia stood in the rain, hair dripping, hope hanging by a thread. She had 2 choices. Go home, cry into a pillow she couldn't afford, or walk in mud, shame, and all. She chose to walk in. The lobby was a perfume cloud. Heels clicked like castanets. Women in tailored suits smiled with teeth so white they glowed. Leia looked like someone who'd been dragged through a war and then handed a job application. The receptionist glanced up. Interview for the CEO's assistant position? Name. Leia Park, she said firmly. You can wait over there. The receptionist didn't hide the judgment. The woman in the pink blazer beside her actually scooted away. Then the elevator opened. Henry Foster stepped out. Impeccable, silent, lethal in silk. He scanned the lobby, saw her, and kept walking. No smile, no apology, as if she were part of the architecture. Something strange and forgettable. By the time her name was called, Leia had dried her blouse with a tissue, flipped her resume, and whispered a prayer to the universe. If this is humiliation, let me wear it with dignity. Inside the glass-walled office, he looked up, and for just a second, he almost smiled. Miss Park, he said, interesting choice of attire. Urban surprise, she replied. Courtesy of your tires. I like bold candidates. This is just natural. The mud only highlights it. He didn't laugh. Not really. But the corner of his mouth twitched. Why do you think you're qualified for this job? Because I'm fast, I'm smart, and I didn't let this morning stop me. Modest, too, he added dryly. One thing at a time. By the end of the interview, he said only this. We'll be in touch. She stood, turned to go, then paused. If you're planning to splash anyone else, please pick a different day. This one's already been enough. Outside the office, her heart was racing. Inside, he couldn't stop thinking about the girl in the mud and the way she looked at him like she wasn't afraid. Not of him, not of anything. Sometimes the people we try to ignore are the ones we can't forget. Chapter 1. The girl in the lobby. She sat quietly, not touching anything. Not the company pen, not the sleek black desk she'd been assigned, not even the coffee she was offered by mistake. Leia Park had mastered stillness, the kind of stillness that belonged to someone used to being underestimated. At 9, Silkwarts, the glass door opened and the room went silent. Henry Foster walked in impeccable, unreadable. He passed by perfume and posture until he stopped in front of her. Her. The girl who'd shown up covered in mud. Miss Park, he said flatly. Mr. Foster, she replied, standing up a little too fast. Her chair squeaked. She flinched. He looked at it, then at her. No smile. You're early. Trying not to repeat yesterday's grand entrance, she replied. He nodded once. A pause hung in the air. And then, you're clean. For now, she said with a tight smile. He turned and walked away. She sat down, heart pounding, already sweating through her cheap blouse. The first mistake came at 9:47. She spilled coffee. It landed on a report. Melissa, the senior assistant, looked at her like she'd committed treason. We usually aim to avoid staining six-figure projections, she said. Voice, like silk over glass. Then maybe we should print them on napkins, Leia muttered, blotting the mess with the sleeve of her cardigan. At 10:03, she tripped on the edge of the carpet. At 11:08, she mispronounced a board member's last name. At 11:32, she got lost trying to find the restroom and ended up in a conference call about European markets. She waved, apologized, and backed out slowly. Day 1, she whispered to herself, still not fired. Small wins. By 2:00 p.m. Everyone was too busy to notice her. Perfect. A data report was sitting on the wrong desk. She opened it. It was a mess. Numbers jumbled, colors clashing. Logic nowhere in sight. No one had claimed it. She stayed late, cleaned it up, color-coded, simplified, named every tab. She printed it at 6:57 and walked quietly to his door. He looked up when she entered. What now? I rewrote the Q3 breakdown, she said, placing it on the desk. He opened the folder, scanned it. This is better than what finance submitted last quarter. That's what happens when you let a broke girl with a laptop and zero ego near your numbers. He looked up, blinked slowly. Did you really just say that? Yes, I'm also cheap labor, and I bring my own lunch. He closed the folder and leaned back. For a moment, nothing, and then a smirk. The first one, outside. The city glowed in the dusk. She walked to the elevator barefoot, heels dangling from one hand. As the doors closed, she heard a whisper from behind. She won't last a week. Leia didn't look back. She just smiled to herself and said softly, "Want to bet?" Chapter 2. The CEO's Mystery. By Wednesday, Leia had learned 3 things. The CEO never smiled in meetings. Melissa smiled too much when it hurt. Everyone had memorized the script. Everyone. Except her. She arrived early again. Always early now. It was the only way to breathe before the oxygen of the office got too thin. Her desk sat like an afterthought beside Henry Foster's corner of glass and silence. Sometimes she could feel his eyes on her, like a flicker, gone before she could check. And sometimes, when she looked up too fast, she caught the tail end of him turning away mid-morning. A crisis erupted over a shareholder pitch. The layout was wrong. Fonts clashed. Colors bled. Melissa was already blaming the intern. Leia watched quietly, then walked to the file, opened it, and fixed it. No one asked her. But when Henry entered the room and saw the updated file projected neatly on the screen, he paused. Who adjusted this? Silence. Leia didn't speak. Miss Park, he said flatly. You just cleaned up the mess, sir, she said, steady. He said nothing, but later, a short email arrived in her inbox. Subject, layout. Message, good instincts. 2 words, no emoji, no signature. But it made her chest warm in a way that surprised her. By Friday, people had started whispering again. Why her? She must be someone's niece. Maybe she's blackmailing him. Leia heard it all. She smiled anyway, but deep down, she felt the pressure like a hand around her ribs. That afternoon, the elevator stalled between floors. Just her and Henry. At first, silence. Then, do you have claustrophobia? He asked, noticing her clenched fists. Only if the air runs out. He gave the faintest smile. It won't. That's comforting. Coming from a man with no expression. I have expressions. Name one. Mild disappointment. She laughed, then looked at him. Why did you hire me? He didn't answer right away. You didn't flinch, he said finally, even when humiliated. So I'm your inspirational pet project? No, he said. You're a reminder. Of what? He looked away. That not everything valuable arrives clean and polished. The elevator jolted, then resumed. They didn't speak again. But something had shifted, and neither of them could pretend otherwise. Sometimes, the people we least expect are the ones who remind us we're still human. Chapter 3. She won't break. It began with a compliment. Sort of, you're surprisingly competent, Melissa said, with a smile sharp enough to slice paper. That spreadsheet you fixed. Clean, effective, uncharacteristic. Leia only nodded. She'd learned the rules. The smile behind the blade, the praise that wasn't. The office tension was rising like heat trapped beneath glass. Whispers spread faster than emails. The mud girl's still here. She's got dirt on him, has to. Did you see the way he looked at her yesterday? Leia kept walking. That week, she was handed a last-minute task. Prep materials for a confidential partner meeting. Just standard slides, said Douglas. From partnerships. You don't need to tell anyone. Something felt off. She hesitated. But part of her, the part still hungry to prove herself, nodded. I'll take care of it. She stayed late again, polishing charts, smoothing typos, until Diego passed her desk, paused, and frowned. Why are you working on the Horizon proposal? Douglas asked me to. Why? Diego's face tightened. Leia, that's board-level access. You shouldn't even be touching it. Her stomach dropped. He said it was urgent, confidential. Yeah, so confidential it'll blow up in your face. It did. The next morning, Henry called her in. Alone. Door closed. Did you access restricted files without authorization? His tone was cold, professional, but behind it, tight frustration. Douglas asked me to help. I didn't know. Exactly. You didn't know, and you should have asked. Her voice cracked, just once. I just wanted to prove I could do more. Silence. Then, you're impulsive, he said. That's dangerous in a place where people are waiting for you to fail. Her eyes hardened. If you regret hiring me, just say it. I'll walk out. He stepped closer. Slower. No, I don't regret it. I just need you to be smarter. She folded her arms. Because being different is already enough of a crime. Because being different terrifies people who hide behind sameness. They stood there resentful, cornered, burning. Then, quietly, so what do I do now? She asked. He looked at her. Stay, but be strategic. Less fire, more focus. That's going to be hard, she muttered. I know, he said. You're all fire. She smiled just a little, then turned to leave. If I get fired, I'm singing my exit speech. Make it a short song, he replied. That night, Melissa toasted glasses with Douglas across the street. She won't last another week, he said. Let's hope not, she replied. And somewhere above them, alone in a cold office, Henry stared at a glowing screen. Her name highlighted in a sea of numbers. She won't break, he murmured, and that's what scares them. Some people rise when they're praised. Others rise when they're almost destroyed. Chapter 4. The Mirror Cracks. The day the video went viral, Leia was trying to choose between oat milk and cheap powdered creamer in the break room. She had no idea the entire world had just seen her worst moment. Looped, replayed, mimicked, and adored. It started with Diego's voice, urgent and weirdly excited. "Leia, you need to see this." She thought it was a cat meme. It wasn't. It was her, running across the street, umbrella bent, splashed with mud. The caption, "This girl got hit by life and still walked in like a queen." Her eyes widened. Who posted this? A flower shop's security cam. Someone clipped it. Added music. Boom, 300,000 shares. Leia stared. There she was, a walking disaster, frozen mid-splash, hair in chaos, eyes defiant. The comments poured in. Ixon, esse francesor. Disinor. Kirchati girl energy. Hire her. I want to be her. This is what resilience looks like. She should have felt empowered. Instead, she felt exposed. By noon, the whispers began. By 2 p.m. Her phone buzzed nonstop. "Are you the girl from that video? Are you and the CEO dating? Did you plan it? Genius? PR. Move if you did." Melissa walked by, phone in hand. "You're famous," she said sweetly. "Famous for showing up unprepared." Leia said nothing, but her jaw clenched. Henry called her into his office at 3. "Who lit it?" He was standing by the window, tie loosened, unusually tense. "I tried to have the videos taken down," he said, without turning. "Why?" she asked. "Because they shouldn't be laughing at you." "They're not all laughing," she said. Voice quiet. "Some are inspired, but you didn't ask for this." "No," she said. "I asked for a job. I asked to be respected. Instead, I got turned into a joke or a symbol." He turned to face her. "You don't deserve this kind of scrutiny." "Then stop putting me under a microscope," she snapped, eyes suddenly wet. "You say I'm different, valuable, but you let them talk. You let them wonder. You let me carry the weight. I didn't know how to protect you." "I don't need protecting. I need people to believe I belong here." She walked out before he could say another word. For the rest of the day, the office felt like a hall of mirrors. Everything she did, every glance, every sip of coffee was being watched, noticed, judged. That night, she didn't sleep. She scrolled through messages, texts from college friends, strangers, reporters, even her sister. "You're a phenomenon. Leia, launch your own line of umbrellas. Write a book." She wanted to scream. By morning, Melissa was waiting like a shadow with a fresh smile and sharper claws. "There's talk," she said in passing, "about you and Henry, about special treatment." "There is no treatment," Leia replied, shoulders square. "Of course not," Melissa said. "And that's what makes it unfortunate how things look." In the break room, she overheard 2 employees whispering she was just supposed to be a replacement. A joke. Now she's viral. Maybe Henry likes projects. Maybe she's his charity case. Leia walked out, fists trembling, head high, at her desk. She opened a new document, typed a title, Exit Strategy. She stared at it for a full minute before closing the file. Not yet, not without saying what needed to be said. Later that afternoon, she found herself on the rooftop, not to cry, just to breathe. The city below blinked with lights and noise. She didn't hear Henry walk up. "I asked the legal team to block the reposts," he said. "Don't," she replied. "Why not?" "Because they won't forget, no matter how many links you kill. What matters now is what I do next." He was silent for a while. "Then, tell me how to fix this." "You don't," she said. "You just stand beside me or step back." He looked at her, like she was something he hadn't figured out yet. "Why did you really hire me?" she asked. "Because you made me laugh when I forgot how." "Then let me stay the girl who earned her spot, not the girl who went viral." "You were never just a girl," he said. "You were the mirror." "Then they're going to hate what they see," she whispered. The next day, the board called an emergency meeting. Accusations, rumors, formal reviews. Melissa's voice floated through the hallway. "It's about perception, reputation, morality clauses." Henry's voice cut through. "It's about fear. They're afraid she might be better than what they built." Leia typed a letter, printed it, folded it, left it on Henry's desk. It read, "Henry, I didn't leave because I gave up. I left because I realized I was losing myself while trying to be enough for people who never intended to see me at all. You never promised me a soft place to land, but I need to find one anyway. Maybe not in this building, maybe not in these shoes, but I'll always be grateful for the moment you didn't look away, even if you didn't know what it meant yet. See you around." Leia. She didn't take her coffee mug, didn't clear her drawer, didn't cry. She just left, one breath at a time. Across the city, in a corner office, suddenly too quiet, Henry unfolded the letter again. He read the same line for the third time. "For the moment you didn't look away." He looked out the window, but this time, he didn't look away either. There's a moment when the glass cracks, not loud, not sudden, but quiet enough to split the truth wide open. Chapter 5. The Real Reason. Henry Foster didn't speak for the rest of the day. Not to the board, not to Melissa, not even to Claire, who usually read him like a stock chart. Her letter sat on his desk, folded 3 times, edges worn from his fingers, tracing it again and again. He hadn't expected it. He should have, because even something unbreakable has a limit. That evening, he went home and stood in front of his kitchen sink, still in his suit, shoes kicked halfway across the floor, silence ringing in his ears. He poured a glass of water and didn't drink it. He just whispered to the counter. I never told her why. The first time he saw her wasn't the lobby. It was 3 weeks before that. He'd been walking through the building at night, his usual ritual when the world spun too fast. He liked silence, control, fluorescent lights, and predictable carpet. But that night, from the hallway, he saw her. Leia. She was balancing 2 coffee cups, muttering to herself, her cardigan tied in a sloppy knot. She laughed at something on her phone, leaned against the vending machine like it was home. He watched, and for the first time in months, his chest didn't feel so tight. After she left the company, everything turned loud again. The office buzzed with theories and whispers. She quit before she got fired. It was an affair. Has to be. He's spiraling. Look at him. He heard it all. Said nothing. But something inside him was shifting. At home, he pulled open a drawer, took out her resume, still slightly stained, still wrinkled. He read it like scripture, every misspelled bullet point, every humble job title, every strange formatting choice. He smiled. It was never about perfection, he murmured. It was about her. He didn't sleep that night. Instead, he opened an old box, letters, pictures, pieces of a past he rarely touched. In the bottom corner was a photo. His brother, smiling, sunlight in his hair, gone. He looked at the photo, then at Leia's letter again. She sees people the way he used to, he whispered. That's the real reason. Days passed. He didn't call her. He didn't chase. But every time he looked up from his desk, the chair beside his glass office felt painfully empty, and so did he. Then, one morning, Claire walked in holding a plain white envelope. She sent this to the front desk. Claire said gently. Inside was a photo. Leia, standing outside a bookstore, holding a notebook and smiling. Underneath, in her handwriting, you said I cracked your routine. Now, you have to decide if you want something real instead. That afternoon, Henry packed a bag. He canceled a meeting, got into his car, and drove to her part of town, an old neighborhood with cracked sidewalks and corner cafes that sold stale pastries and warm hope. He found her sitting on a park bench, scribbling in that same notebook. She looked up, didn't smile, didn't run, just waited. He sat beside her and said only this: "The real reason I hired you wasn't because you were bold or funny, or even because you reminded me of someone I lost. It was because when you walked in that day, covered in mud, you looked at me like I was still human, and I hadn't felt that in years." She closed the notebook. "You could have said that sooner. I didn't know how." And now, he took her hand, quietly. "Now I know I don't want a polished life. I want a real one, with the girl who didn't break." Sometimes, the real reason we choose someone is because they remind us we're still worth choosing too. Chapter 6. The funeral you never attended. The train ride to the coast was quiet. Leia didn't ask why they were going. Henry hadn't offered to explain. He just showed up at her door, car parked, suitcase in hand, and said, "There's something I need to show you. Something I've never shown anyone." She hesitated for a breath, then nodded. The cottage was small, perched on a lonely stretch of Rhode Island shore, white paint peeling, one window cracked, wind humming through the eaves like a lullaby that had forgotten its words. Henry unlocked the door with the kind of reverence reserved for memory. Leia stepped inside and felt it immediately, a heaviness, a hush, like the air had been holding its breath since the last time someone had dared to feel here. He lit the fireplace, but didn't speak. Instead, he handed her a photo. Two boys, one with a wild grin, the other, Henry, already too serious. "My brother," he said finally. "Ellie." She studied the image, then looked up. "You never talk about him, because talking doesn't undo death." Silence. The fire crackled softly, the only sound in the house. "He died in a crash. I was 19. He was 16. We fought that morning over something stupid. I don't even remember what. That night, I found a voicemail. He said, 'Let's just forget it. Life's too short.' I never called him back." Leia's voice was barely a whisper. "You've been carrying that silence ever since." He nodded. "Every day, in every meeting, every deal, every quiet second before sleep. That's why you control everything," she said. "Why you never let go." "Because if I do, I'm afraid I'll shatter." He stood and walked to a small wooden drawer near the window, took out a folded note, yellowed with time. He wrote this the day before he died. "I found it months later, buried under his mattress." He handed it to her. "Don't forget to live. Big brother, you forget so easily. Try laughing more. Try failing once or twice. Try kissing someone without planning it 3 days ahead." Leia's hands trembled. "He knew you," she whispered, "better than anyone." They buried the note in the sand the next morning. Henry pressed the paper into the earth like a secret, finally allowed to rest. No music, no prayers, just wind and waves and forgiveness. Later, sitting on the porch, he turned to her, eyes softer, shoulders lighter. "Thank you for coming. You didn't invite me," she said. "I didn't have to." She took his hand, and he didn't pull away. He held it like he never wanted to let go again. Some funerals don't happen at graves. They happen the moment you finally speak the words you've buried with the person you lost. Chapter 7. The baby that was never born. They returned to the city just before sunset. The world had kept spinning while they were gone. Emails, headlines, office politics. But something between them had stilled, not in a cold way, in the way something finally rests after years of shaking. Back at Leia's apartment, Henry stayed for tea, not wine, not whiskey, just 2 chipped mugs, soft lamplight, and the scent of jasmine. He sat on the edge of her couch, hands folded. "You asked me why I built walls," he said. "There's another reason." She didn't speak, just waited. He reached into the inside pocket of his coat and pulled out a photograph. Leia leaned forward. A sonogram. She froze. Her name would have been Ivy. He said softly, it was years ago. I was engaged. Her name was Grace. It wasn't a great love. Not like this. He caught himself, recalibrated, but it was real enough. And we were trying to make it work. Leia said nothing, just listened. Grace miscarried at 21 weeks. I was out of town. A business trip. I couldn't cancel. I wasn't there. I didn't even know until she called from the hospital. You blame yourself, Leia whispered. I left her alone in a sterile room, holding what should have been a life, and I wasn't there to say goodbye. She reached across the table, gently touched the edge of the sonogram. And you never told anyone. What do you say? Hi, I lost a baby no one ever met, and I don't know how to grieve something I never held. You just did, she said. He looked at her then. Really looked, eyes glassy, guarded no more. Every time someone says, I don't feel enough, they have no idea. Leia nodded. Her voice cracked like a whisper over glass. I lost a baby too. Henry sat up, startled. I was 19. It was a boy. I was too scared, too alone. And when I woke up bleeding, I didn't even tell my mom. I just cleaned it up, stayed quiet, and carried on like nothing happened. They sat in silence. Two people, two graves no one had ever seen. Do you still think about it? He asked. Every time I see a playground. Me too, he said. Every time I pass a baby store I can't walk into. That night, they didn't kiss. They didn't touch. They just sat, shoulder to shoulder, hearts pressed up against a memory no one else would ever understand. And it was enough, more than enough. Some losses have no anniversaries, no flowers, no graves, just names whispered only once to someone who finally knows what it means to carry them. Chapter 8. Guilt is a quiet voice. Leia hadn't returned to the foster group, not officially, but somehow she was still in Henry's world. In his evenings, in his silences, in the moments between decisions, they didn't define it. They didn't label what was slowly becoming them. But they both knew it was no longer just almost. One Tuesday afternoon, he showed up at her apartment without warning. No flowers, just a file in hand, and exhaustion in his eyes. Melissa's trying to bury a vendor scandal. I need your eyes on this. So, I'm your secret consultant now, she teased. Taking the file, you're the only person I trust to tell me the truth. She raised an eyebrow. Truth hurts, only when it's the kind that frees you. She spent the next 3 hours on the floor, barefoot, glasses sliding down her nose, dissecting spreadsheets, while Henry watched from the couch. Quietly mesmerized, at one point, she looked up and caught him staring. What? You look different when you're in your zone. Like what? Like you've forgotten the weight of the world. She smiled faintly. It always finds me again. Later that night, as they walked side by side through her neighborhood, Henry asked something unexpected. Why did you really leave? She stopped, looked at the sky, then whispered, because I was afraid I'd start living for your approval instead of my own. The words hung between them, fragile but honest. You thought I'd control you, he asked. No, I thought I'd lose myself trying to be worthy of someone like you, someone like me, clean, powerful, in control. He laughed once, quiet and almost bitter. That's not who I am. Leia, that's who I pretend to be. And me, showing up in mud, cracked the performance. You ruined everything, he said softly. She laughed. You're welcome. Back at her door, just before he turned to leave, he said, you don't have to prove yourself anymore. Her voice dropped. That's the hardest thing to believe. After he left, she sat on her bed and cried, without knowing exactly why. Not from sadness, but from the weight of letting go, of expectations, of shame, of the voice in her head that whispered, you're not enough. Not for someone like him. Henry, meanwhile, stood in his penthouse, staring at his own reflection, wondering when guilt became his closest companion, wondering how it still lived in the corners of every silent room. The next morning, she sent him one line by text, still figuring out how to love myself louder than guilt ever spoke. His reply came hours later, but it was enough. I'll wait as long as it takes. Guilt doesn't shout, it whispers. But healing speaks back with softness, with courage, and one brave, I'm still here. Chapter 9. When Forgiveness Hangs in the Air. Leia hadn't seen the office in nearly 2 months, but on a gray Thursday morning, a message arrived from Claire, not Henry. Emergency board vote. Henry's stepping down unless someone speaks. I know you didn't want to come back, but this isn't about the job anymore. She stared at the screen, heart pounding, then typed only 2 words, I'm coming. When she stepped through the glass doors of the foster group lobby, the silence was immediate. No one whispered, but no one smiled either. She wasn't mud-stained this time. She wore a plain navy dress, hair pinned back, eyes clear. You don't need approval, she whispered to herself in the elevator. You just need truth. The boardroom was tense. Melissa sat near the back, hands folded. A picture of composure. Henry stood at the head of the table, sleeves rolled up, tie abandoned. He didn't know she was coming. When he saw her, his eyes faltered, just for a second, but it was enough. I'd like to speak, Leia said. No one objected. She stepped forward, voice even. There are rumors, accusations, whispers of favoritism, of unprofessional ties. Some of you think I got here because of luck, or pity, or scandal, maybe even affection. But here's the truth. I showed up that day covered in mud, not because I wanted attention, but because I was desperate, because I had nothing left to lose. And still, I stood in front of your CEO and gave him honesty, not perfection. I've been laughed at, filmed without my consent, underestimated, and manipulated. But I stayed. I worked. I delivered. So if this company wants to punish someone, punish me, not because I broke the rules, but because I broke your idea of what belonging should look like. Silence. Melissa wouldn't meet her eyes. Claire leaned back, visibly moved. Henry just watched her like she'd lit a fire inside every hollow place in him. That's all, Leia said quietly. Do what you have to do. She turned to leave, but a voice spoke up. Henry's, this company doesn't need another suit who learned to smile without feeling. It needs people who aren't afraid to show up messy and real. I'm not stepping down. And if that's a problem, then maybe it's the board that needs replacing. They left together, not hand in hand, not yet. But something had shifted, not in the air, in the silence, that strange, holy silence that comes just before forgiveness. Outside the building, rain had started. Leia laughed, fitting. Isn't it? It always rains when something ends, he said, or begins. He looked at her. I was going to let you walk away. You did, and I hated myself every day since. She studied him. Then say what you couldn't say before. He took a breath. I'm sorry, Leia, not just for what they did, for what I didn't do, for not fighting harder, for not making you feel like you were already more than enough. She blinked. Once, twice. Then, I forgive you. And just like that, the weight between them lifted, not gone, but no longer unbearable. Forgiveness isn't a moment. It's a breath, a pause, a trembling step forward when you're still unsure. But your heart says, go. Chapter 10. The Real Wedding. 1 month later, Leia stood in front of a mirror. No veil, no church organ, no aisle lined with roses, just a simple ivory dress off the rack and a pair of white sneakers with a faint mud stain on the sole. Fitting, she whispered to her reflection. Perfect. Actually, they didn't call it a wedding. Not at first. not in the formal sense. It was a gathering, just close friends, a rooftop, strung with borrowed lights, and the soft hum of music from an old speaker Henry had insisted was still perfectly fine. But when he saw her walk onto the rooftop, his breath caught like it had the day she walked into his office, covered in chaos and something he couldn't name yet. This time, she didn't have mud on her pants, but she still carried that defiant light in her eyes like she'd lived through fire and came out gold. "You're late," he whispered, trying to smile. "You're overdressed," she replied, looking at his tie. "You love it. I tolerate it." "I'll take that," Claire officiated. Diego cried twice before the opening line. Jean, the stylist, wore a flamingo print tuxedo, and Melissa? No one was quite sure if she came or not. Everyone was too busy watching them. "Leia Park," Henry said, taking her hands. "I've spent my whole life building things no one could touch: walls, empires, armor. And then you showed up and ruined all of it. And I've never been more grateful." She smiled, eyes glassy. "Henry Foster, you were the storm I didn't ask for, and the shelter I didn't know I deserved. I still talk too much, trip over nothing, and say exactly what I'm thinking. But I promise to be real, to be home, even on the days you forget where you left your heart. I'll remind you." The kiss wasn't cinematic. No fireworks, no slow dip, just quiet, reverent. The kind of kiss that says, "We made it. You're safe now." After the cake lemon with too much frosting and the speeches, Diego's included a haiku. Henry pulled Leia aside. "Can I show you something?" He led her to the corner of the rooftop, where a small easel stood covered in cloth. He pulled the cloth away. It was a painting, not perfect, a little messy, but it was of her. That moment, the lobby, the umbrella, the mud, but her face was radiant. "You made me human again," he said. "You made me believe again," she replied. They stood in the wind, arms wrapped around each other, forehead to forehead. The city glittered below. Above them, string lights swayed. Inside them, peace. Final reflective line. It wasn't the dress. It wasn't the venue. It was this: two broken people who chose to stay, who chose to begin again. Not as perfect, but as real. She wasn't supposed to be chosen. Not in the lobby, not in the boardroom, not in love. But somehow, she was, not because she was perfect, but because she was real. Because when everything tried to break her, she showed up anyway, with humor, with honesty, with hope that maybe, just maybe, she didn't need to become someone else to be worthy of everything she dreamed of. Henry still reads her blog. She still wears sneakers to meetings. Their wedding photo never went viral, but it sits on his desk beside her first wrinkled resume. It began with mud. It ended in light. And somewhere in between, they learned that true love doesn't rescue you. It meets you where you are and walks with you home. What did you think of this story? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Rate it from 0 to 10. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell so you never miss a story. And stay tuned. More powerful stories are waiting for you right here. If this story moved something in you, if you've ever felt unseen, underestimated, or like love wasn't meant for someone like you, remember this: you are already enough, and the right person won't fix you. They'll find you. If this story stayed with you, the next one goes even deeper. Leave a comment. Tell us where you're watching from. Subscribe for more true love stories that remind us what matters. See you in the next one.